Let's welcome Abby Clobridge to OpenTechTalks.tv. Thank you, Abby, for joining us. And for audience, if you can introduce yourself, where are you based, what you do?
Sure. I'm Abby Clobridge. I'm the founder of Fireoak Strategies. We are a boutique consulting firm. We specialize in knowledge management. We do a lot of work working with small and scaling and growing businesses to serve as fractional CIOs. We do a lot of work around AI strategy and implementation and anything related to managing, sharing, and securing information, data, and knowledge. So knowledge management broadly. I'm based
Okay,
out of the United
so
States and in North Carolina. Sorry about that.
no, it's okay. Thank you so much. So how long you been doing this?
I founded the company 15 years ago, and I've been working in this space, knowledge management broadly, for about 25 years now, a little bit more than that, actually. But the AI
So
piece is
customers keep,
definitely new.
okay, so customers keeps you busy from last 15
Yes.
years.
Yep.
All right, so it must be making numbers.
Yeah. We work with a small-ish number of clients at any point in time, and then tend to have long-term relationships with many of them. But some of them are just short projects, depending on kind of the nature of the work.
Sure. So the most disruption happened into knowledge management, right? From last 2.5 years, 3 years?
Yeah,
Almost now, 3
it's
years.
been a big change the last couple of years in
Right.
how
So let's
people
then start
think
with the
about that.
ChatGPT, arrival of ChatGPT, and how it's impacting what you're doing with the respect to customers, managing it, and all that.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, well, I don't know about the biggest thing, but there are definitely a lot of things that have changed. I mean, the really
Uh-huh.
everything from before 3 years ago to now. I mean, it's still the same concepts. Organizations want to make their internal information and knowledge findable, discoverable, reusable, and make it as easy as possible for staff to build upon what the organization has done. But with
Right.
things like ChatGPT, the pace of how information and knowledge get created on a daily basis has just skyrocketed. And we have
Uh-huh.
all sorts of new issues related to security and data leaking out of the organization
Uh-huh.
and things related to what's called ROT, redundancy, obsolete information, trivial data. So we've got a lot of
Uh-huh.
different copies of files that previously the least interesting thing an organization could do is clean up their files, make sure they didn't have
Right.
15 copies of the same thing. It didn't really matter other than storage space or making things harder for people to find the right version of something. So organizations didn't really want to invest the time to take on that kind of cleanup project. But now, as we're feeding massive amounts of internal knowledge to ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini, suddenly
Uh-huh.
making sure we only have one copy of the file, not 15, is becoming really important. And so we're seeing a lot more focus
That's very
on that.
interesting.
Yes.
That's the interesting aspects. It's not about only humans. Then now which copy is going to go to LLM?
Yes, exactly. And if you have 3 versions of a draft and 2 versions from last year, the LLM is going to pick up kind of whichever one it thinks is the right one, which may not be the version that you want it providing information back to your staff related to. So suddenly precision is really important.
Okay. So then let's start with some of the challenges over the last 3 years while working with LLMs, with the customers, focus, anything which you want to share it, and what are the lessons learned?
I mean, the pace of change is tremendous, and I think that that's been
Mm-hmm.
hard for a lot of organizations to keep up with.
Right.
So some of the clients that we've worked with and organizations we've worked with over the last few years, there's a little bit of a sense of like, we want to wait until the ecosystem
Mm-hmm.
is solidified, and we don't want to jump in right now because we want to wait until
Right.
it's perfect. And I think that that's troublesome for a lot of organizations. So, but at the same time, trying to keep up with the pace of change is really difficult for most of us who are mortals and only have so many hours in the day, and there's only so much time
Mm-hmm.
to spend on these. So that's definitely been a challenge for a lot of organizations. We're seeing AI pop up in everything, which isn't necessarily a good thing. Every time I log into a platform, it's like, oh yeah, now AI, great. I didn't need AI in that particular tool. So the costs are going up, the number of seats are going up that people need, and they're adding features that a lot of us don't necessarily need and want. So that's been a challenge for organizations that are using legacy platforms and systems, trying to expedite how we shift from on-premises file systems and servers to SharePoint Online, for instance. That's a big one that keeps coming up. Or how do we move all of our stuff from one platform to another so that we can make it AI ready and do it as quickly as possible with limited staff time to do these things? And that's been a real challenge for a lot of organizations. But the bright side, I think that this is an interesting opportunity for small and medium-sized businesses that may have been left out of previous technology shifts to be able to jump into the mix in ways that they hadn't before. And tools are a lot cheaper. So there are a lot of benefits to small organizations right now that can become really competitive quickly.
Okay. Maybe subsequent question. You mentioned the word A readiness,
Yeah,
right? And based on your experience, how it constitutes with respect to different sizes of customers, right? Maybe for
yeah,
smaller one is it easy, but the larger one is a challenge. So maybe some comment on that, on the A readiness, what you're seeing in the field while
yeah.
working with different customers.
I
And
think
then,
that,
yep,
sorry, so you
go
can
ahead, go
ask
ahead.
all the questions at once.
No. Let's go with this one then
Okay, let's
first.
start on that. So I think for most organizations, AI readiness doesn't necessarily look exactly the same, but it's a question of
Huh,
doing things in an
huh,
intentional way
huh,
and rather than just jumping in. And so we're
uh-huh,
seeing some organizations like, we'll just buy these 5 platforms and get licenses for everybody. And they spend a lot of money, but then they're kind of creating this ecosystem fragmentation and platform proliferation
right.
that can be making the problem harder in some ways than rather than easier. So I guess the most important thing from my perspective is doing things in a strategic way and doing it intentionally rather than just trying 1,000 things with no real plan in mind or path forward. And there's a little bit of experimentation, absolutely, that needs to happen with any new technology. What is it that this technology can do? But with AI in particular, the organizations that are doing the most with AI are really the ones where there's a clear problem that they're trying to solve and they're trying to use
Uh-huh,
AI to solve it in a different way, or something new that they want to do that they've never been able to do before. So, how do we use AI to augment our team or try something completely new? But there's a very clear goal in mind. And I think that that's one of the pieces that's really important in terms of AI readiness, necessarily about the technology in many cases, but what are your staff ready for? What policies do you have in place? What
uh-huh,
governance structure is in place? Do you have a way that staff can request a new platform and there's a vetting process and you don't just say yes
uh-huh,
to everything? And now you've got 10 different AI meeting note taker tools in the
right.
organization. So just doing it with a lot of clarity and intentionality, I think it's really important. And it doesn't take a lot of time to make those key decisions. So doesn't have to slow things down.
I think you slightly mentioned that my next question about these different tools and hypes and going on, and for leaders
Yeah.
or anyone, is it is quite challenging to which one to pick it up. So have you seen any patterns emerging or any suggestion for the leaders?
I think that's a question that really depends on the organization and what
Uh-huh,
technology and tools are already in place and how, again, it's back to the goals. So, what goal do you have for AI and how it's being used? And then, can you leverage existing tools in different ways than you have previously? Or is there something you can layer on rather than building out something in a silo? Or where does AI need to kind of fit into the bigger puzzle? So, I think thinking through that, and that's a question where I think it does look different from organization to organization, and that's where unique characteristics and tech stack and IT abilities all come into play.
so then maybe keeping in the context of this our conversation now, if they're large organizations or maybe a medium size, they have the existing IT ecosystem. And what we are observing is bringing AI to that ecosystem is quite challenging because things are breaking, right? So while you work with different organizations, what's your experience on it and any suggestions for if someone listening to us and he want to take up in his or her organization?
Yeah. I think it makes a really big difference if you can get IT involved in the conversation as early as
Uh-huh,
possible.
uh-huh,
We've always Anyone who's been working in technology has had the experience of being someplace and then a member of the C-suite or executive team comes back from a conference and is like, "Oh, I saw this thing and it's amazing and we need to use it." Well, but it's not going to fit anywhere into our ecosystem. And I think that that's where getting your IT team involved in those conversations with AI tools early is really,
uh-huh,
really important because they're going to be able to say, like, help navigate through the process of it. That's a great tool, but it's not for us, and here's why. Or we don't
uh-huh,
really know enough about that, and let's take a look at it together. And here are the things that we're thinking about from a security perspective. Does that mesh with the organization? Or you may not know this, but this tool that we're already using can do exactly what you're talking about.
Mm.
Getting into, getting IT in as a partner, not necessarily to push the organization forward in terms of making business decisions, but figuring out how IT can help achieve whatever it is that the organization is trying to accomplish.
But there is also a mindset where that, okay, IT can become a showstopper, that, okay, the leaders want to have a
Yeah,
mission, they want to move quickly, and these IT folks comes and then they say, oh, we need X, Y, Z.
absolutely. And that's why, I mean, to some degree, it's a question of how is your team positioned to help do these things, and do you have the right team in place? And if not, then if you're already seeing signs that the department as a whole or the leadership for that department isn't able to kind of get the business to where you want it to go, it's just going to get worse over the next couple of years. So start thinking at this point, what you want to accomplish, what's the 5-year plan for the organization, and how can IT help with that? Or are there other options in this place?
Okay. And okay, let's come back to your experience while working with the customers. What type of use cases, or maybe, type of customers or the challenges which you are observing it?
Yeah, we work with a bunch of different kinds of organizations. We work at
Mm.
a lot of organizations that are fairly small but nimble and want to get things done. And so they're looking for like what's the easiest path, but also what's the right path right now, so that we're not in a situation 2 years from now where we have this massive amount of technical debt or we have this platform that's an outlier. We also work
Hmm.
with really big organizations, some Fortune 500 companies that are really focused on what they're doing and know their internal business really well, but don't necessarily have the internal skills or time or just capacity to take on certain types of projects. So we do a lot of work to build out knowledge bases and figure out what does that mean. And especially right now with AI, how can AI help that and do that implementation or migration or curation? We do a lot of curation work to rethink how information and knowledge is packaged so that it can get to
Hmm.
people and to the technologies, the LLMs, in the right way as much as possible. It's kind of a mix.
Okay. And how's the perception from customers?
I mean, every organization is a little bit different in terms of what they're looking
Right.
for and how they're reacting to AI, and which
Hmm.
organizations are, like you said, really anxious to move forward as quickly as possible, and others are taking a little bit more of a wait and see approach, or we're going to be patient and try to do this because we only want to do it right. And I think with
Hmm.
many of our kind of the bigger organizations, sort of the middle group of clients that we have in terms of size, they want to they want to do the investment right now, but
Hmm.
they don't want to do it again in another 18 months. So let's think
Hmm.
about how can we build out an infrastructure and the policies and do the change management and the governance so that we're looking at long-term sustainability and scalability, even if we don't know exactly what the future is going to look like from a technology perspective 3 years from now or 5 years from now.
Okay. Is there a common question? Okay, what is the use case of Gen AI? I'm going to use it, or no? They want the capabilities, or they are aware about it.
I think all of the organizations that we're working with kind of come into this from different perspectives. There are definitely some
Hmm.
organizations that are like, we really want to use AI to cut down on some of the boring, repetitive tasks that we need to do over and over again that nobody particularly likes doing. Others are looking for kind of new ways to synthesize information. So, what new learnings can we extract from this mountain of data that we already have? And can we do something new and innovative and unique that we didn't even know we could do? Other organizations are trying to use AI to sort of vet or validate the path that they are thinking they're going down. We work with a number of research and development organizations, so they have very specific ideas in mind about what products they're pursuing, what new technologies they're building out. And it's more like, is this the best possible way to do this? And going back and forth with AI as a thought partner to try to see, are we making the best decisions we can? Are there missed opportunities that we could be incorporating in? So I think it's a combination of things. We're doing a lot of work with automation, and that's definitely something that we've seen where a number of business leaders kind of come to us talking about AI, but what they're really looking for is automation. And there's probably an AI component to it. How can we eliminate some of this manual data entry in multiple systems that we still have a lot of people doing? And how do we automate that process as efficiently and effectively as possible? So those are some quick wins that we definitely can put in place. but depends on the tech stack and everything else going on.
Okay, you rightly pointed out about this automation, and I think that's the major space right now,
Yeah.
right? Okay, there are capabilities available, but now how I can automate or get benefit out of it, and I think that's the weird stage where the customers are targeting to get that one. All right. So if someone is listening to us and he want to just learn from automation point of view, what are some common patterns or use cases which you guys are working on from an automation point of view?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of work. I mean, social media is kind of the obvious one that everybody is doing, but I think where a lot of organizations can use AI is kind of as a research assistant. So, for instance, somebody fills out a form on a website, and then instead of just automating the process to send an email, which is what everybody's been doing for, I don't know, decades at this point, you can actually send something to an automated process that uses an AI assistant to say, is this a valid lead? Or who is this person trying to get in touch with from the farm, and do some research, and then to take that a couple of steps further and get it done in 30 seconds and have it delivered to a bunch of people instead of just one person, which is kind of what we had been doing. So kind of taking the concepts before, but how can we push things past the point that we had been doing it? And what are the next 5 steps that once somebody inbound leads is definitely one area where we're seeing this, or donors for nonprofits. And it used to be that we would get the information about the person, but then somebody would take that information and spend some time looking at LinkedIn and doing research on websites and trying to figure out what the person or organization was doing and who the person was and all of that. And we can automate all of that pretty easily right now. May not be 100% accurate, but there's a good starting point.
Okay. And are they happy with the outcomes of after those
For the most
automation
part.
with the Gen AI?
Yeah,
Most of the
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and if not, then it's a question of, well, how do we refine this so that
part.
the automation is working better? We're probably not going to get it perfect on the first try, and that's
Yeah.
okay. But usually it's like, oh, yeah, we did that. Well, I hadn't thought about these other 5 steps. Can we keep going? Yes, we can keep going.
Okay. And due to AI or Gen AI, maybe are they open with the budgets and all that, which are additional budgets compared to the traditional digital transformation type of works?
Yeah, I think most of the organizations that we're working with right now actually are pretty open to the budgets, because not necessarily saying, everybody in a 500-person organization should have a ChatGPT license, but how do we take advantage of APIs where tokens are pretty
Fine.
affordable, relatively speaking. And when you start thinking about the terms of like how much time we're saving within an organization, so if we have people who have a set salary and we're able to shave off 5% of their tasks, well, what is that in the annual year? And then you kind of start doing the math for other people and higher level people within the organization. Suddenly, $200,000 investment is not that ridiculous because it's one position within an organization. Thinking about it, not necessarily to say we should eliminate positions, but how do we augment what we're doing and be able to get the humans to do things far more at a higher level instead of some of the really boring stuff. And I think when you start doing the math that way, it's easier for execs to get on board with spending some money to figure out what we.
Okay. Any risks which leaders shares with you due to Gen AI, or maybe they are more bothered about that? Okay, I need to be worried about this.
Well, they should be worried whether or not they are, but what
Okay.
data are you putting into LLMs, and is it being used for training purposes? So if you're putting your organization's intellectual property into an LLM and you don't have any of the privacy measures turned on, and you're trusting that people are doing the right thing, or staff are even worse, using free versions of tools and putting your organization's intellectual property in, well, your competitors could potentially get access to that information pretty easily. So thinking through what does it mean to work in this ecosystem and what are the right protections to be putting in place so that we're doing what we can to reasonably be protecting our intellectual property, and trying to balance, and this is where a lot of the conversations are going now, do we build our own internal models and host things ourselves, or do we use tools and trust OpenAI and Anthropic and Google when they say that they're not using our data for learning purposes? So I think these are real issues and risks and concerns that absolutely leaders should be thinking about. Doesn't mean there's one answer for every organization, but
Right.
ignoring it is concerning. And I'm personally concerned with all of the AI tools that are attending meetings. So you send your AI assistant to the meeting, people aren't even necessarily going. everything in that meeting is being recorded. And if you're talking about intellectual property, you have your organization's intellectual property scattered about with a half dozen other AI organizations plus your stakeholders. And it's really easy for it to leak out of the organization quite quickly. So thinking through what
That's true.
that should look like is really important and not just turning a blind eye.
True. I agree. I agree to that one. Okay. Maybe based on your work with different customers, and you must be having a small team, big team. How do you hire people within your team?
That's a good question. I think the roles have changed quite a bit over the last couple of years. We're intentionally small. I'm the founder, but I am
Right.
also a consultant, and I really love being a consultant. So we're not trying to be a 100-person organization. We're very happy. I'm very happy with us being small. So we don't hire very often, to be completely honest. And it's really a question of all of us continuing to keep our skills fresh and
Hmm.
navigating that space the same as everybody else.
Okay. And with these fractional leadership roles
Yeah.
while working with different customers, how it is helping you and the customer?
Yeah, it's kind of a different model than a lot of organizations traditionally have had. I mean, in some ways, it's similar to any other consulting work where you're bringing in an outside expert in a particular area. For fractional CIO work in particular, though, a lot of organizations feel like they're too small to have a full-time
Mhm.
CIO. And I think that's a fair statement because based on the work we're doing, it's not a full-time job. And so you either would be spending a lot of money to bring in an expert isn't doing full-time work, which is dangerous for a bunch of reasons, or you end up with kind of lower level managers who don't necessarily have the strategic experience to be making long-term recommendations for the future of a company. And so you're sort of missing out on that level of expertise. So this is kind of the best of both worlds for organizations that are either too small or too new and just don't yet have an internal CIO or don't really plan on it for various reasons. So we work with them on a fractional basis. We're not full time. There's no expectation that we are. And for some organizations, it's for months or a year or years. And then we help them when it is the right point to say, it's time for you to have an internal person and we'll help you find the right person because we really know the work quite well. So we're in a good
Hmm.
position to help them figure out who to hire.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Now coming back to the Gen AI and as a Abby, how do you keep updating yourself?
I mean, that one I think is the big question for everybody right now. We
Yeah.
do a lot of reading, we do a lot of testing, we do a lot of trial and error. We build stuff and then we rebuild it in a different platform 2 weeks later for our own internal stuff. It's a lot of reading and staying current. I'm a member of a bunch of different organizations and communities and online communities where I'm constantly learning from other people. And we're all kind of in that and in different spaces and following along what's going on. A lot of it's also trial and error and using these tools on a regular basis. We've always been kind of big advocates of using the tools and platforms that we're recommending to our clients or that our clients are using, even if we didn't necessarily want to be using them. And so right now that means that we've all had to change our day-to-day behavior and ways of working so that instead of I'm going to do something from scratch, I've had to change my instincts. So it's using the AI tool and which tool is the right tool for this particular thing, and then partnering with AI constantly.
All right. Okay.
But still
Thank you
not
so
enough
much for
hours in the week.
yeah, that's true. Thank you so much for joining us. But before you leave for day, maybe if you want to leave few tips for anyone who's new to the Gen AI as an entrepreneur or maybe as an organization and they're very overwhelmed with information available. Is there any tips for them how they can start?
I think just starting is kind of the best way to go and not waiting at this point. I mean, ChatGPT has been around in its current state in some form or another for several years now. And don't wait, I think is really the way to go. Talk to people. There are a lot of people out there who are helping organizations kind of go through this journey and talk to your peers, talk to other experts, listen to podcasts like this one, and educate yourself.
All right. Thank you so much for joining, Abby. Thank you.
You're welcome. It was nice to speak with you.
Same here. Thank you.
Okay.